Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 292, The Ketogenic Diet Explained with Dr. Joel Kahn.
That's right. In today's episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we get back on the podcast with Dr. Joel Kahn, who
For the third time,
and it's not a round table either. So I think he's actually the first person to make it for 3 interviews. And we reached out to him just a couple of days ago because we really wanted to get you somebody who knew exactly what they were talking about, knew the research, and we really wanted to explain not only what a ketogenic diet is, but we wanted to answer the question about what about plant-based keto. If you've been anywhere on social media, you know that keto is being put out there from here to there. And we've been getting a lot of questions from you, a lot of our listeners, a lot of our Facebook followers and Instagram followers who've really been saying, okay, so we get why a ketogenic diet or a keto diet is not a good thing, but what about plant-based keto? Because you're still eating plant foods. So we really wanted to give you the information so that you could understand and be able to have the education to make decisions for yourself.
And so what we did with Dr. Kahn is we actually broke down what exactly the ketogenic diet is, and if it's possible to do it as someone who's plant-based. We also talked about how it has an effect on athletes, and is it really something that we should be doing for the long term? Now, for those of you that don't know who Dr. Joel Kahn is, he's a plant-based cardiologist who combines the best of Western and complementary therapies for total healing, and he's known as America's heart healthy doc. He's been practicing for over 25 years, and he's been improving the lives and vitality of thousands of patients, taking many of them from chronic health problems to vibrant living. His passion for education and prevention is recognized by his patients and peer doctors alike. And that's really important, that when what you do is recognized by your peers, that just means you're doing some awesome stuff. He's also the author of The Plant-Based Solution, America's Heart Health Doc's Plan to Power Your Health. And we will link to all of the articles and other podcasts that we talk about in this show in the show notes at planttrainers.com/292. And of course, as you'll hear, we talk to him straight from his restaurant, the Green Space Cafe in Michigan.
We're just lucky that he wasn't on The Doctors or Dr. Oz or any other kind of daytime television shows that he's been doing lately, and that he was available to us, and we locked him down for you. So when we're not working out and eating, we spend a lot of time driving around and answering other people's questions. So we thought that we would marry the two and create a brand new mini-series that we'll share on all of our social media platforms, and it's called Carpool Q&A Ask Plant Trainers.
Carpool Q&A is an opportunity for us to help our local community get their nutrition and fitness questions answered while driving around with us in our green machine. If you're in the GTA or surrounding areas, go to planttrainers.com/carpool. That's planttrainers.com/CARPOOL to complete your application. And we hope to be driving with you soon.
Honk honk.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
Today, I am grateful for mentors. I've been called a mentor before, which is extremely humbling. And I think it's important to recognize that every mentor needs a mentor as well. And I'm just very grateful for all the people out there who have helped me on my journey, whether it be from a plant-based point of view, a personal point of view, or what have you.
I'm grateful for what we did the other day, and that is we got outside in the winter snow, in the cold, and we went tobogganing as a family. And some of us didn't want to go, but we got out there. We had a great time as a family, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, what better way is there to make winter suck less than getting out there and having fun in the snow?
He's quoting me, how to make winter suck less. Dr. Joel Kahn, welcome back to the Plant Trainers Podcast. We're so excited to have you on today.
Hoot, hoot, hoot. I am so excited too.
You're becoming a household name with, everything that you're doing, national television and all of that. And we have some really burning questions for you today. But first, of course, a moment of gratitude.
I agree. I am grateful for the energy I have. It's actually National Random Acts of Kindness Day, but the energy and health I have, which is partly by accident and partly by a purposeful plan, to be able to focus 7 days a week on spreading messages of health and wellness and betterment of life. And people like you as my partners, I'm very grateful for, because God knows we live in a society where there's all the negative, but let's only talk positive and random acts of kindness today. Get a door, buy a cup of coffee, say hello, smile at somebody you don't know today, and it'll be a better world.
That is awesome and a great thing for everybody to do. And Dr. Kahn, this is the third time you're on our show, which is not something we've done before. This is probably, you're maybe the second person who's been on our show 3 times. So thank you for being here. And last time we spoke about your book, The Plant-Based Solution. Today, we wanted to focus a little bit more on the ketogenic diet. It's become something that has really hit social media very strong. There's been documentaries that have come out about it. And we know that you were recently on the TV show The Doctors, talking about a specific documentary and the ketogenic diet. So we thought it would be great to have you on today to really explain to our listeners and clarify a lot of the questions surrounding the ketogenic diet. And I know right now you're sitting in your beautiful restaurant, the Green Space Cafe, and we talked about that one before. So if people listening want to go back and hear Dr. Kahn on our other shows, he was on episode 91 and episode 231, and we're going to link to our show notes at planttrainers.com/292 for you to get links to everything we're going to talk about today and to those previous shows. So Dr. Kahn, welcome back. And can you please clarify for everybody exactly what the ketogenic diet is all about?
Right, and you're absolutely right. It's very hot. It's actually confusing. My active life on Twitter, everything on Instagram is about bathing suits and beauty, but Twitter gets down and dirty, and it's challenging because there are some very smart people out there either talking down about plant diets or constantly pointing out the fact we might have to take B12 and the ketogenic diet does everything right. So there is historically a medical role for the ketogenic diet, ketogenic being the idea if you can drop your carbohydrate intake very low. And of course, we all agree. What do we share with the ketogenic diet people? We're not talking about carbohydrates like Skittles and donuts and Mountain Dew. Everybody agrees those carbohydrate calories should be absent or very, very infrequent. But we're talking about beans and rice and starchy carbohydrate foods like sweet potatoes and purple potatoes, gone. You're leaving a few low glycemic berries and a few low glycemic greens. And you're emphasizing high fat, as high as 90% of calories in your diet from fat. And if you go back 100 years or so, maybe you go back 2,500 years, it's said that Hippocrates mentioned a diet like this for brain disease. But you go back 100 years when there was no therapy for epilepsy, there was some initiative to try this approach. Actually, it came out of trying fasting for epilepsy. It had some benefit reported, but children with epilepsy aren't very good subjects to put on a fast. So a low-carb, high-fat diet was reported to help maybe 30 to 40% of children with refractory epilepsy, partially or largely improve their severe medical state. And then when pharmaceutical drugs came on board for epilepsy, it largely disappeared, but it's come back as part of a medical treatment for brain disease. I don't take any exception with that. But of those studies that are published in children with epilepsy, put on this low-carb, high-fat diet to stimulate the liver to make a fuel for the brain called ketone bodies that we have the ability to make when we're starving. We have the ability to provoke the body to make when we eat very low carbs. So we're not going to get much glucose in our blood from a sweet potato. We have to get it from somewhere. And it turns out the liver can take fats and create 3 chemicals, the most famous of which is called beta-hydroxybutyrate, a ketone body. You can buy a strip at the drugstore to show that your urine has an unnaturally high level of ketone bodies. You can do it in your blood if you get a certain monitor. And what went from a medical treatment for a very important but small niche illness with research studies documenting the side effects of that approach. Children with heart issues, children with skin issues, children with gastrointestinal issues and kidney issues from this diet. It somehow has in the last decade become, the fad that it is. It's the Dr. Atkins of 35 years ago, repackaged, with Halle Berry and LeBron James and Hugh Jackman and Kim Kardashian and others, and never a discussion, even amongst the medical people, let alone the National Enquirer people, that this is hot, hot, hot. So that literally right now in a vitamin store or a natural health food store, the number of keto-friendly products, whether they be foods or supplements or powders or liquids, you can even spend $100 and get 3 shot glasses that are pure beta-hydroxybutyrate from a company in LA. Why even bother to eat this way? Just, provoke your body into this high ketone state instantly. And the truth is, if you lower the calories in your diet, you're going to lose weight. If you lower the simple carbohydrates like sugars in your diet, you're going to lose weight because your liver's full of glycogen, your muscles full of glycogen. You'll start to burn them up if you eat no carbohydrates of any consequence, and you'll lose water and glycogen weight short term. That's why the Atkins diet always works short term. In fact, the U.S. News and World Report just said, we hate the ketogenic diet. They listed it as one of the worst diets to ever consider, except for rapid weight loss. I got to fit in a tuxedo and a wedding dress in 10 days. The ketogenic diet, I think, came in number 2, but plant-based diets do the same thing. Water fasting does the same thing. Dr. Longo's fasting mimicking diet does the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get there. So there's this sensation now that a few doctors out there are pushing the ketogenic diet, a few PhDs. About 100,000 podcasts out there are keto something. The paleo movement's kind of fading, and the ketogenic diet has come on as even a more intense discipline to provoke the body, to do something we have the ability to do. But, in days of old, we can only imagine we were hungry and then we ate. We were hungry, then we ate. So maybe we were at times in ketosis and at times not. But I have many friends in the health world that will proudly announce I'm, 4.5 years in ketosis, 5 years in ketosis. And these people aren't really trying to take much of a break. They're going at it. So is there any downside to trying to shift your fuel from glucose, which is the brain's natural fuel, to a combination of glucose and ketone bodies? And in reality, the medical science is very scary, but you won't see this at the health food store, the vitamin shop, the online sites. You won't see anybody telling you, if you look at a pharmaceutical ad on TV and you see the new drug that they're promoting, there's, at least in the United States, there's 90% of the ad is all the warning, warning, warning. Well, that's what should be part of the ketogenic diet pitch by medical doctors, PhDs, coaches, fitness people, nutritionists, companies, is a big, giant asterisk. This is what you should know. But because it's not a prescription drug, people can decide whether they want to give a full spectrum or not. So I'm going to stop there to let you ask a question, but I'd be happy to dive into what should the consumer be concerned about the ketogenic diet as an option using predominantly animal fats, which is how it's usually done with butters and lards and oils, oils are plant-based, but meats to excess. I mean, usually it's not by intention a very high protein diet, but if you're eating a lot of meats, you're obviously going to get a fair amount of protein and animal fat combined. So I'll take a pause and let you jump in.
Thanks. So basically what we're hearing is that it can get you some good results. It can help, stimulate the brain, and it can help you lose weight. And if you're going to be cutting out all of these junk foods, right? I think that what happens is when we kind of take the reductionist theory and we say carbohydrates, not all carbs are created equal. But when we take out all of these processed foods, the body reacts a lot better. So people start to see positive results. And my understanding is that the reason why the body even has this state is because back when we were hunters and gatherers, that if there was a frost or there was a drought and there was no food available, this was the body's mechanism for staying alive and being able to, wait a week or a couple of days until food was found again. And now we're kind of taking advantage of it and it's all sexy. But for the average person, they might be able to do this short term. But what is the long-term effects? Because we do see in certain movies and certain podcasts and online people saying that your cholesterol might come down or your blood pressure might come down, but you're still eating cholesterol. So what are the long-term side effects or even short-term side effects that people need to be worried about?
Right. Well, you said that well. So I encourage everybody to be as familiar as possible with the science being added to the world by Dr. Walter Longo, Longo, PhD, University of Southern California, a great book called The Longevity Diet, which is a largely plant-based description of his 25 years of science. But what I refer to specifically is he's one of the preeminent scientists in the world, I think on a path to a Nobel Prize. And he talked about these 5 pillars of evaluation. If you hear about a diet, 5 pillars evaluate whether there's strong support or not. One is the basic biochemical science. And everything about adding more meat to your diet, the basic biochemical science says will increase aging in the body and probably cancer risk and heart disease risk. So that pillar says the ketogenic diet, 2 thumbs down. And Dr. Longo agrees. Second is randomized clinical studies. It's very hard to do that in nutrition. Take one group of people and really get them to eat one way, and another group really get them to eat another way, and really get them to stick to it. It works great for a drug and a placebo. It's hard to do. There's very little with the ketogenic diet. There's not that much with the plant-based diet. Dr. Dean Ornish would be a study of severe heart patients, but at least we have that, and we know the outcome. Third would be the whipping boy of every ketogenic expert, the epidemiologic study that across the world, the blue zones, more fruits and vegetables, whole grains and legumes, greater health, greater longevity, reduction in chronic disease. Well, there is no epidemiology that finds a natural population of longevity and health, and they ate very low carb, high fat. I mean, some people point out the Inuit and the Maasai. I mean, they're irrelevant to my life. I don't live in Nome and I don't live in Africa. And there's legitimate scientific reasons why any claim about the Inuit and the Maasai are degraded by better science and say they did develop atherosclerosis and heart disease. That's of no value. Then there is the 5th pillar is called the big picture pillar, which is it good for the environment to recommend to people to eat more meat? And we know it's not. We know it's the exact opposite of Oxford University, United Nations, USDA, and this recent amazing article called Eat Lancet that was published recently by 37 experts in 16 countries. It took 2 years. It said basically shift to a plant-based diet now or we'll have no place for 10 billion people on this planet in 2050. And then there is the 4th pillar, which we'll just leave for you. I'll leave that as a tease. Go Google and read more about Walter Longo, the 5 pillars of nutrition. I've written about it. Other world-class scientists use the same framework. I have an article out there on the web about how nutritional analysis is done by Nobel Prize nominated or awarded scientists. It's very different than the blogosphere. And then specifically, I'll just real quick, I've got a blog out there that anybody can read called Low Carb, High Coffin Diet, and it lists all the studies. And I'm objective. If the study said that the ketogenic diet improved lifespan or heart disease, let's run there. But Dr. Noto, 272,000 people. You follow a low carb, high fat diet, it increases your risk of death. DEATH, death. Dr. Lee, Harvard School of Public Health. You've had a heart attack. Your diet is low carb, high fat. Increased risk of death. Dr. Sodrin in Sweden. You follow a low carb, high fat diet, it increases your risk of death. Dr. Fung, Harvard School of Public Health. And it's on and on. So altogether now, as of this moment, there are more than 1 million humans in epidemiologic studies, which is what the majority of scientific nutrition studies are, that say you sacrifice your waistline for your longevity, you're mortgaging your future. Or if that's not true, the ketogenic movement needs to put up some big numbers pretty quick to prove it's not the case. But I mean, all the science that's out there is in my article, is the low-carb, animal-based diet a high coffin diet? That was published end of 2018.
And we will link to that in the show notes at planttrainers.com.
Okay, great. And, you know, it's so everybody can be an expert on the internet. And I've said this, and I really believe this. If there's new data that says a heavy animal diet, a heavy butter diet can stop and reverse the number one killer of men and women in Canada, United States, and around the world, cardiovascular disease, I'll teach it to my patients and tell them it's an option. But it's quite the opposite. It suggests you accelerate your risk of dying. It's a very tough world. Obesity, overweight, prediabetes, diabetes are serious issues. And the ketogenic diet is sexy right now as a solution, but are you mortgaging your future to deal short term? It's not an easy diet to do long term, and a clean plant-based diet isn't necessarily an easy diet to do long term, but it's a much, much better scientifically supported diet. Dr. Longo, in interviews and such, calls the ketogenic diet, remember there's 5 pillars, of which he calls the plant-based diet 5 for 5. He describes the ketogenic diet as a half a pillar diet. There's people that say they feel better, and you can't discount that as totally worthless or fraudulent, and I don't, but that's not the whole spectrum of science. So, you know, that's an emotional plea to be very cautious. And maybe the last topic, but I'll stop again, is there such a thing as a plant-based ketogenic diet?
That's exactly where we were going, because we're getting a ton of questions coming in. We had a question from Irina just 2 days ago, and it says, I still don't understand if a plant-based keto diet is okay and why not, if so.
There's so much more great information coming your way, but before we get to that, we wanted to give an extra shout out to tell you we appreciate how much you care. Because of your contributions, no matter how big or small, you've helped us to cover hosting and production costs, as well as give a bright young intern a chance to work with our compassionate company. For those of you who want to help support the show, support learning opportunities for young plant-based students and compassionate causes, you can do so at patreon.com/planttrainers or click the link in the show notes. And now back to the show.
So, you know, there are a couple suggestive pieces of science if you want to try and make a good decision. Number one, go back to Dr. Longo. He not only has done great science and this great book, which if you're strictly plant-based and you read his book, you might say, why the heck is he talking about fish a couple times a week? Well, the world's leading scientist is talking about plant-based meals 19 times a week. That's not bad for our effort. He's certainly not talking about 19 meat meals a week. But getting back on track, he's developed a research program over 20 years about putting animals into ketosis and putting humans into ketosis with plant diets by reducing calories and increasing healthy plant fats like nuts and olives. That's called the fasting mimicking diet. It's a commercially available box of food that's gluten-free, high quality, and plant-based that University of Southern California and a company in LA have available for anybody that meets the criteria. Not everybody meets the criteria. If you're an insulin-dependent diabetic, you don't want to be doing an 800-calorie-a-day diet. But they have evidence that this plant-based gentle ketosis, 5 days in a row, and then you go back to your regular healthy diet, induces a gentle ketosis, causes you to lose fat around your belly, same thing that people are looking for, causes you to lower your cholesterol and blood sugar, same thing people are looking for, but it actually causes the release of stem cells from your bone marrow. It's called the stem cell regenerative program using plant foods that induce a gentle ketosis for only 5 days, not for 5 years. And it's a very, very hopeful piece of scientific data that's very strong and now being used in combination with chemotherapy and multiple sclerosis therapy and other things. People just need to read about the fasting mimicking diet. Again, I've written many blogs. The last one was about the fact that the U.S. government awarded a patent to Dr. Longo. And I will say all of Dr. Longo's proceeds go to research and charity. He's a university professor, and he keeps his commercial interest in providing this healthy program away from his salary. He doesn't make a dollar from it. He's a clean scientist. And then you get to people that are creating their own version of vegan keto. There's a Facebook group of 100,000 people. There's some physicians. I just noticed this morning that David Avocado Wolf. Some people will know David Avocado Wolf. What an interesting, I think he's from Toronto. I think he's Canadian, but, followed by millions and millions of people worldwide on social media. He's now lecturing on vegan keto at a conference in a couple weeks. I'm intrigued by that. I'm intrigued by what he might say. We'll just have to see. But you can take a giant plate of greens and low carb. Like, I'm a big fan of something called lupini beans. I turned on to them by some vegan low carb people I know, lupini beans. And you can smother it with avocado oil, and you'll end up with a meal that's 80% calories from fat, and the rest is plants. I did it for a week. I'm not recommending it to anybody. It was a lot oilier than what I normally eat, and I wouldn't recommend it to my heart patients. But I lost a few pounds. It was pretty bland and, frankly, a little difficult. I guess if I went to a restaurant, I'd order a plate of spinach and put olive oil all over it or something. We don't have any real science. But I would encourage anybody who says, I'm going to do a keto diet, I'd much rather you have a plate of spinach and avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil on it than you dive into the meat world, God knows. So it's pretty wide open, but the best science in the world for ketosis is Dr. Longo's, and that is plant-based ketosis. So we've won again if you really want to be serious about the science.
So let's just break it down for people for one moment. If it's somebody who's getting on with life, everything's great, they're a good weight, their energy's great, they don't have any serious illness, there's no reason for them to go plant-based ketosis.
There isn't, but again, to be scientifically complete here, Dr. Longo's program has data by boosting stem cells. It may add, we don't know for sure, but it was awarded a patent for healthy longevity, that any healthy person might once or twice a month take 5 days, follow this program, and gain a benefit that we can talk about, but we don't know for sure. But more science from animal models to human models than every other ketogenic program, and it's plant-based, and it's only 5 days. He calls it periodic ketosis. He's very strong about the fact you don't want to be in ketosis nonstop. But for the general person, other than that exception, no, ignore this whole noise. Eat your legumes and your peas, your beans, your lentils, your sweet potatoes, your greens, your quinoa, your grains. Enjoy all that and not worry about the noise.
So we have a lot of listeners that are athletes in the field of athletics. They have found this ketosis. They have fallen into this ketogenic diet realm, and they are fueling solely on fats as they believe that this is the body's best source of energy long-term for their endurance sports. What do you think of that?
There's so many examples of clean plant-based athletes now, from endurance to weightlifting to competitive to the Tennessee Titans, professional sports and all the rest, that we know that you can fuel an amazing human body with the kind of food plate that you eat and I eat, emphasizing fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, beans, lentils. And it's not necessary to be world class and have to go into ketosis to achieve that. It may, in fact, be dangerous. I mean, I read some of those blogs, and there are some smart people with PhDs. I really warn people, it's not necessary. The science is very clear that you can improve your cardiovascular and your performance with whole food plant-based that has all the other attributes of promoting healthy organ function, longevity, optimal weight, low inflammation. And it's better for the environment, which is not an independent observation. It's the observation of the Eat Lancet panel, the Oxford panel, the USDA panel, the United Nations panel. So do something good for the world while you do something good for yourself, even if you're a high-level athlete. If somebody doesn't follow on like Instagram, Nime Delgado, the only plant-based bodybuilder on the cover of, I think, Men's Fitness, I think was the magazine, and the kind of giant plates of whole foods he eats that look just like what you eat and I eat, but he eats more because he works out to such a level. That's all you got to do, and we know that, whether you're Lewis Hamilton or David Carter or, some of the other kind of world-class athletes we know have achieved great success on the kind of diets without going off the ketogenic binge.
Yeah, my concern is always that the athletes are thinking short term and not long term, and there isn't really long-term research that we've heard or spoken about that have proven that going into ketosis long-term is going to benefit people in the long run. And that's something that people don't really think about when they're in athletics and performance, when they're thinking immediate.
Yeah. I do sympathize with your listeners about confusion, because I've had the opportunity to be invited on and participate in some podcasts. There are some people out there with no medical degrees. They often have engineering backgrounds. A guy named Dave Feldman on Twitter, he goes by the Fat Emperor, Ivan Cummings. These people they've been able to create an income flow on social media by lecturing and such. They spend 24 hours a day reading science, self-experimenting, and they post some very sexy stuff that, I'm not going to call it pseudoscience, because sometimes they're really doing interesting experiments on their own health. But God, it's noisy stuff out there. It's not the way science should be done. And I just urge people, be patient. We know whether, we go back to PCRM's food plate, which is very much like you and I eat, even the USDA, the Harvard School of Public Health, the brand new Canadian food guideline food plate, the Eat Lancet food plate, that is, there's no subterfuge of some conspiracy theory to get people to eat the wrong foods. It's the solid advice. And if you're a self-experimenter and a biohacker, be careful. I guess you can do what you want, but I'd encourage you to stick to the tried and true that so many people have synthesized all the data and said is whole food, plant-based diets. Even Dr. Longo has come to that conclusion from a very Italian Mediterranean perspective.
There's no question that nutrition is super confusing. And even when we were watching that documentary that we mentioned at the beginning of the show, I said to Shush, if I had only watched this documentary, there were some things that they said that, you know what, I may not have ever gone to a plant-based diet, because it was so convincing to watch these people change their lives and, eliminate illnesses that they had based on this diet. But thankfully, 8 years, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I watched Forks Over Knives. I got into the plant-based lifestyle. I met Dr. Esselstyn and other doctors like you, and I found this path. But if someone was to just turn on the TV and see that, it's very convincing.
Right.
So how do people really know what they should be doing, or what path should they be going along to get themselves a little healthier without hearing all the noise around?
Yeah, it is hard. How do you stop hearing the noise? It's on social media, so you can choose not to follow those people. You can choose. I would always run to Dr. Garth Davis's YouTube, Facebook page. The man is not making a living off the book Proteinaholic. He's a successful surgeon. He cares. He's authentic. I'm in the same perspective. I may be sitting in a restaurant I own that serves plants. Believe me, that's no way I'm going to make $1 at the end of a decade. It's passion and it's caring and love for the community. We really are authentic people. Neil Barnard, read and go back. John McDougall, Dr. Dean Ornish, his new book, Undo It. Daniel Bellardo, this cardiology fellow, VegMD, that's blown up the world. There's nothing brand new in the science that says we got it all wrong. It's true, weight and obesity issues are rising. It's a very complex formula of air pollution and water quality and food additives and endocrine disrupting chemicals and sleep and Wi-Fi and the availability everywhere of hyper-processed food for vegans and non-vegans. But you'll always be better off washing an apple and eating it, washing a salad and eating it. I'm saying because we really do need to consider the environmental toxins. They are truly impacting our health. And it's not possible to take every headline. That's the problem. It's not possible to take every headline and write a blog in response. Every time a butter article, a meat article come out, some of which are substantial science, and they challenge me to fully understand the scientific construct and the weaknesses and the flaws. This stuff called meta-analysis, where you've not done any new study, but you've picked some studies, lumped them together, and reanalyzed. It very much depends what studies you pick and how you analyze it and what your criteria are, because that's what led to the idea that saturated fat in food like butter, cheese, and red meats aren't as clearly linked to heart disease as we thought. They were flawed meta-analysis. Nobody did any new science, but be very wary, that truly, I just ignore all that noise. It really is not authentic. And go to the 5 pillars. Ask yourself, and that's very hard for one individual to do. Does this make sense? Is it good for the environment? Is this a new randomized clinical trial? Is this a large epidemiology study, or is this just some headline? Headlines fall in the to be ignored file.
I think we're very lucky here in Canada that the food guide that just came out is promoting more plants, which will in turn hopefully help Canadians find a healthier way to eat and a healthier lifestyle to follow.
I agree. It's a beautiful, beautiful document.
So, some of this we had visited already when we had Dr. T. Colin Campbell on a couple of weeks ago. We might hop back into this again with Dr. Dean Ornish in the next couple of weeks when we interview him in just a couple of days. So I want the listeners to really keep their ears peeled so that they can have what's going on and they could know exactly what's going on. We appreciate so much you taking the time today to speak to us, to help clarify some of those questions out there that I think are really rumbling through all different kinds of communities, not just the plant-based community. And we're always grateful to have you on the show. And what is your breakfast this morning? What are you eating?
I'm having baby kale breakfast hash. So I've got some potatoes, some whole grains. I think it's quinoa, kale, some lemon, all tossed together in a breakfast hash. It's delicious with something called chermoula on top. And I am unable to spell it or make it, but I have wonderful people here that do both.
Sounds good, and it's making me hungry. Dr. Kahn, if people want to reach out and connect with you, where is the best place for them to go?
Green Space Cafe in Ferndale, Michigan. Okay, that was self-promotional. drjoelkahn.com. drjoelkahn.com. Lots of fun things I do every day are there.
All right, we'll be putting all that in the show notes at planttrainers.com/292. Thank you so much again for your time. We really do appreciate you and all you're doing. Have yourself a great afternoon.
So kind. You too. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans. It really helps other people find us just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time and have a healthy day. Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.